The invitation arrived unexpectedly. It was neatly folded with a bright red envelope sealed shut, the kind of invitation that stood out from the usual pile of bills and junk mail. For a moment, Emily hesitated, unsure if she should even open it. She wasn't exactly the type to attend parties. Social gatherings made her anxious. The thought of being around people she didn't know, or worse, being the center of attention, was enough to make her stomach twist into knots. But curiosity got the better of her. With a quick flick of her fingers, she tore the envelope open. Inside was a card, printed with elegant letters, inviting her to a gathering at a friend's house. The party was meant to celebrate the achievements of a colleague, someone she had worked with on a few projects but never really had much in common with outside of work. Still, it seemed harmless enough. The invitation mentioned live music, a few drinks, and as she read through the details, it all seemed casual. It seemed like just another one of those social events that people went to. Her eyes drifted over the words again. The party was on Friday at Jessica's place. Jessica was one of the people who always seemed to be at ease in social situations. She was popular, well-liked by nearly everyone. Emily wasn't exactly close to her, but they'd worked together enough times that Jessica had invited her. And though Emily didn't know it yet, that invitation would be the start of something entirely unexpected. Emily stared at the card in her hand, turning it over a couple of times, as if waiting for the words to magically change into something more familiar, more comfortable. She had gotten used to staying home on weekends, reading books, or spending time at the piano. Music was her safe space. The only time she truly felt in control of her life was when her fingers moved across the keys. It was her escape from the noise of the world, her way of losing herself in something beautiful. But this party, was a whole different world. She didn't know how to navigate the noise of chatter and laughter, how to blend in with a crowd of people who were all so confident, so sure of themselves. She wasn't one to wear flashy clothes, nor did she know the latest gossip or trends. She just wasn't comfortable with all of it. She set the invitation down on the counter, pacing around her small apartment as she thought it over. She wasn't sure what her hesitation was about. She had been to events before, but they had always felt like obligations, not choices. She had never truly wanted to be there. The idea of walking into a room full of strangers made her want to crawl into a hole. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Lily, a close friend who had always encouraged her to go out more, to take risks, and to stop hiding behind her insecurities. "Hey, you got the invite for Jessica's party, right? Come on, it'll be fun. You should definitely go. I'll be there too, so you won't have to deal with it alone. Plus, Jessica's always hosting these great events." Emily paused, biting her lip. She knew Lily meant well, but the idea of walking into a room where everyone would be talking about things she didn't understand made her heart race. Yet Lily was persistent, sending another message just minutes later. "You've been cooped up too long, Em. Seriously, you need to get out more. You don't have to stay the whole time, but come for an hour or so. What's the worst that could happen? You might even have fun." Emily sighed, sitting down on the couch with her phone in hand. She had always been the quiet type. She liked her routine, the comfort of the familiar. She liked knowing what to expect, which was why parties and social events were so overwhelming. But Lily's message had hit a nerve. Maybe it was time to step out of her comfort zone, to take a chance. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the change she needed. With a reluctant sigh, she typed back a simple reply. "Okay, I'll go. But just for a little while." The decision made, she let her phone fall to her side. Now came the hard part, what to wear. She wandered over to her closet, unsure of what would be appropriate. She wasn't the type to wear expensive dresses or flashy outfits, but she still wanted to look presentable. After much deliberation, she settled on a simple black dress that she had never worn before. It was elegant but understated, just like her. As the day of the party approached, her nerves only grew. She couldn't help imagining all the things that could go wrong. What if she said something awkward? What if no one talked to her? What if people laughed at her? She tried to shake off the thoughts, but they kept creeping in. The night of the party arrived, and Emily found herself standing outside Jessica's apartment, staring up at the large building with a feeling of dread settling in her chest. Her heart was pounding, her hands slightly trembling. She could hear the faint hum of music coming from inside, mingling with the sounds of laughter and conversation. It felt like a world she didn't belong to. Lily was already inside, and Emily knew she would be waiting for her. That thought was comforting. At least she wouldn't be alone, but she still couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. She took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The door opened almost immediately, revealing Jessica, smiling brightly. "Emily, you made it!" she exclaimed, stepping aside to let her in. Jessica's warm welcome immediately eased some of Emily's nerves. "Hey, thanks for inviting me," Emily said, offering a shy smile as she stepped inside. Jessica waved her off. "No problem. I'm glad you could come. Everyone's having a great time. Lily's over there by the food table and there's some great music playing. Feel free to grab a drink or something." Emily nodded, trying to act like everything was fine even though her heart was still racing. She followed Jessica into the main room, where a group of people were laughing and chatting, drinks in hand. She spotted Lily right away and her friend waved her over. "Come join us," Lily said, a bright smile on her face. Emily made her way over, glad for the familiar face. As the night wore on, Emily did her best to blend into the background, listening to the conversations but not quite participating. People seemed so at ease, talking about everything from work to movies to their latest vacations. She felt out of place, like an observer rather than a participant. She sipped her drink slowly, trying to calm her nerves. But the buzzing energy of the room only made her feel more self-conscious, and then there was Mark. He had arrived later than most, and Emily hadn't paid him much attention at first. But when he walked into the room, he commanded attention. He was tall, with a confident stride, his presence unmistakable. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Emily, he made a beeline for her. "Hey there," he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're Emily, right?" She nodded, feeling a little unsure about what to say next. "I've heard a lot about you," Mark continued, his tone casual but edged with something more. "You're into music, right? I mean, I guess we all dabble in a little music, but I hear you play piano or something?" Emily felt a slight heat rise to her cheeks. Her piano playing was something she had always kept to herself. It was something private, a talent she never liked to advertise. But Mark wasn't making it sound like a compliment. Yeah, I play," she stammered, trying not to sound defensive. He leaned in a little closer, his voice lowering. "Really? That's cool. I'm more of a music person myself. I mean, I can totally appreciate a good piano piece, but it's all about knowing the right kind of music, you know?" Emily just nodded, unsure where this was going. But she could feel a small tension building. Mark seemed to be toying with her, pushing her into a corner. It was the kind of interaction she had always avoided. "So you should play something for us," he said, smirking. "I mean, if you really are as good as they say, you should definitely give us a little sample. Or is that too much pressure?" Emily felt her face flush. The idea of playing in front of a room full of strangers was terrifying. But Mark wasn't done. "Come on, don't be shy," he added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see if you can actually live up to the hype." And that was when it hit her. Mark wasn't just trying to get her to play. He was trying to embarrass her. Emily's stomach twisted as Mark's challenge hung in the air. She could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her, suffocating her with the pressure. His smirk was still in place, like he knew exactly what to say to make her feel small. She tried to swallow the knot in her throat, but her mouth felt dry. For a second, everything around her seemed to slow down. The conversations of the partygoers, the clinking of glasses, even the music playing in the background. It all faded into the background as Emily tried to process what Mark had just said. She had never been someone who liked being in the spotlight, and the thought of playing in front of a group of strangers, especially with someone like Mark waiting to tear her down, felt like the worst thing that could happen. Lily, who had been standing nearby, glanced between the two of them. She could tell something was off. Emily's usual calm demeanor was slipping, her face flushed with embarrassment. Mark, noticing the shift, took a step closer, his voice lowering as if to press his advantage. "Come on, you're not shy, are you?" His tone was almost too smooth, like he was enjoying the effect he was having on her. "You've got this, right? Just a quick piece, and then you can go back to blending in with the crowd. No big deal." Emily forced herself to look up at him, trying to steady her breathing. The last thing she wanted was to let him see how much he was affecting her. But she knew the truth. She was terrified. Terrified of making a fool of herself. Terrified of everyone laughing, and above all, terrified of Mark being right. There was a part of her that wanted to stand up for herself, to tell him she didn't need to prove anything to him. But the words didn't come out. Instead, she just nodded silently, hoping this would end quickly. She couldn't back down now, not without feeling even worse. Mark's eyes lit up as if he'd won some small victory. "Great. I'm sure you'll impress everyone," he said with a grin that made Emily want to shrink into the floor. He turned, motioning for her to follow him. As they walked across the room toward the grand piano in the corner, Emily could feel her pulse in her ears, her thoughts racing faster than she could process them. She wasn't sure what she was doing or why she agreed to this in the first place. Was she really going to get up and play? In front of all these people? The idea seemed absurd now. When they reached the piano, Mark gestured for her to take a seat. Emily hesitated for a moment, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the smooth surface of the piano. It was as if the instrument itself had become an enemy, something that was now mocking her instead of offering comfort. The room had gone quiet. People were gathering around, some leaning against the walls, others standing close by, all waiting for Emily to play. She could feel their eyes on her, the weight of their expectations pressing down. The silence was deafening. She tried to steady her breath as she slowly sat down on the bench, her hands shaking. She placed her fingers gently on the keys, but they felt foreign, distant. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to block out the tension in the air. Music had always been her safe space. The piano was where she could express herself, where she didn't need words. But now it felt like a cage. She thought about backing out. She could stand up and leave, make some excuse, say she wasn't feeling well or that she didn't know any pieces well enough to play in front of an audience. But something inside her stopped her. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the thought that she couldn't let Mark, of all people, win. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers hovering above the keys. She began to play, the first few notes hesitant and unsure, almost as if she were testing the water. The melody was soft at first, a simple piece she had played countless times when she was younger. It was familiar, comforting, but the more she played, the more she began to lose herself in the music. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly as the music filled the air, creating a space for her to escape into. She could feel her hands moving more confidently, the rhythm flowing more naturally. Emily let herself go, focusing entirely on the music. She let the piano carry her like it always had. For the briefest moment, the audience faded away, and it was just her and the keys, the familiar sound of the notes filling the room. But as she continued to play, she could sense the shift in the room. At first, it had been quiet, the kind of quiet that suggested people were politely waiting for her to mess up. But now it felt different. People were listening, really listening. The soft murmur of conversation had stopped, and all that remained was the sound of Emily's piano. Her fingers flew over the keys with more assurance now, playing a more complicated piece that she hadn't planned on. It wasn't the kind of music she thought would impress everyone, but it was the music that felt right in the moment. It was faster, more complex, and full of emotion. Emotion that she didn't even know she had. The longer she played, the more she began to forget about the crowd. She could feel the energy in the room shifting, like everyone was drawn in by the music. There was no tension anymore, no judgment. Just the sound of her fingers moving across the piano, filling the space with something pure and beautiful. She didn't even notice when Mark stopped standing by the piano and moved back, his expression changing from smug amusement to something closer to awe. His arms were crossed in front of him now, and his mouth was slightly open, as if he was trying to understand what was happening. Emily's heart was pounding in her chest, but it wasn't from nervousness anymore. It was from the exhilaration of playing, of showing these people that she wasn't just some quiet girl who sat in the corner. She was capable. She was talented. The crowd was watching her now, some people even leaning in closer, clearly fascinated by the music. Emily's fingers moved faster, effortlessly weaving together the notes of a piece that she had always loved. She was lost in the moment, completely absorbed in the music, and for the first time that night, she felt free. When she finally came to the end of the piece, she took a deep breath, her hand still hovering over the keys as the last note echoed in the room. The silence that followed was intense, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for something. Then the applause began. It was slow at first, tentative, but it quickly grew into a full-blown roar. People clapped, some even standing up in admiration, their faces filled with genuine appreciation. Emily's heart leapt in her chest, and for a moment, she couldn't believe what had just happened. Mark, who had been watching with a look of disbelief, was one of the first to clap, but it was clear that it wasn't coming from a place of genuine respect. He tried to play it off, offering a half-hearted compliment, but the truth was clear to everyone in the room now. Emily had blown them all away. She stood up from the piano, her legs slightly shaky as she took in the crowd's reaction. Her chest was tight, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from something else, something powerful. She had done it. She had stood up for herself in the face of someone who tried to tear her down, and she had won. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt proud of herself. She had proved something, both to Mark and to herself. And as the applause continued, she couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about playing the piano anymore. It was about showing the world that she was more than the quiet girl in the corner. She was someone who could rise above, someone who could surprise everyone. And as the party continued around her, Emily realized that this was just the beginning. As the applause died down, Emily stood there trying to absorb what had just happened. Her heart was still racing, but it felt different now. No longer from fear, but from exhilaration. She had done it. She had played the piano in front of a room full of people, and not only had she survived, she had wowed them. But as the clapping faded, she found herself caught in a strange mix of emotions. For one, there was the sense of accomplishment, a feeling that was so foreign to her she almost didn't know how to handle it. But along with that, there was a lingering sense of disbelief. She couldn't believe that she had pulled it off, that she hadn't faltered or made a mistake, and that the crowd had actually appreciated her playing. It felt surreal. The room was still buzzing with excitement. People were talking, laughing, complimenting her. Some of them were asking her about her background in music. Others were telling her how amazing her performance was. Emily, overwhelmed by the attention, just smiled awkwardly and mumbled a quiet, "Thank you," each time. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, and the sudden focus on her made her feel a little off balance. Lily came over, her eyes wide with admiration. "That was incredible, Emily," she said, her voice full of excitement. "You were amazing. I knew you could do it, but wow, I didn't expect that. You totally blew them away." Emily felt a wave of gratitude for Lily's support. She smiled, though it was still a little unsure. "Thanks. I didn't expect it to go like that either," she admitted, her voice quieter now. I don't know. I got lost in the music, I guess." Lily nodded, clearly pleased with Emily's response. "See, that's the magic of it. When you play like that, it's not just about showing off or impressing people. It's about the music, about how it moves you, and you could tell it moved everyone here." Emily's smile grew slightly at that. She wasn't used to thinking of her music that way, but Lily was right. For the first time, she hadn't been playing to impress anyone or prove anything. She had just been playing for herself, for the love of the music. That was something she'd forgotten somewhere along the way. Music had always been her escape, her therapy, but she'd never thought of it as something that could move others in the way it had moved her. As Emily took in the compliments, she couldn't help but notice Mark standing off to the side. He wasn't clapping like everyone else, and there was something about his posture that seemed off. At first she thought maybe it was just her imagination, but as her eyes met his, she saw it clearly. He was standing there, arms crossed, watching her with a look that was hard to read. It wasn't admiration, at least not the kind that was genuine. No, there was something else in his expression. It was a mix of disbelief, perhaps even frustration, as if he hadn't expected her to actually succeed. Emily didn't let it bother her. She had already won, hadn't she? She had proven herself in front of a room full of strangers, and that was enough. She didn't need Mark's approval, especially not after everything he had said to her earlier. In fact, she was starting to feel a little better about the whole situation. The fear and insecurity that had plagued her when she first walked into the party were beginning to fade away, replaced by something else: confidence. But then, as if on cue, Mark pushed himself off the wall and walked over to her. Emily couldn't help but feel a slight tightness in her chest as he approached. She braced herself, unsure of what he might say now. "Well, well," Mark said, his voice smooth but with an edge to it. "I have to admit that was impressive." Emily didn't know what to make of his tone. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't completely dismissive either. "Thanks," she replied, keeping her voice steady. He seemed to study her for a moment, as if deciding what to say next. "I was just messing with you earlier, you know. I didn't expect you to actually go up there and play, but you did. You've got some real talent. I'll give you that." His words felt like a backhanded compliment, and Emily could tell he was still trying to maintain some level of superiority. But it didn't bother her the way it would have before. She had done something tonight that she'd never thought possible, something that had nothing to do with Mark, or his judgment, or anyone else's opinions. It was her achievement, and that was all that mattered. "Thanks," she said again, this time more firmly. She gave him a small smile, but it wasn't one of gratitude. It was more of a quiet acknowledgement. "I'm glad you think so." Mark raised an eyebrow, as if he wasn't quite sure how to take her response. He had probably expected her to be more flustered, more eager to accept his praise. But Emily wasn't going to let him control the situation anymore. She wasn't the same person she had been when she first walked into the party. The conversation with Mark didn't last much longer. After a few more awkward exchanges, he finally wandered off, leaving Emily standing there, still processing what had just happened. She was aware of the party going on around her, the people still chatting and laughing, but it all felt distant now. Her mind was occupied with something else, the way she had felt when she played the piano, the way she had been completely lost in the music, and how, for the first time in a long time, she had felt truly confident. Lily, noticing that Emily had retreated into her thoughts, gave her a gentle nudge. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, her voice soft but concerned. Emily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, I'm good. Just thinking about everything." "You should be proud of yourself," Lily said, her voice full of warmth. "You've got a lot of people here who are in awe of you right now. Not just because of how well you played, but because you had the guts to get up there in the first place. Most people would have backed out, but you didn't." Emily felt a surge of emotion rise up in her chest at Lily's words. She had always been the one to back out, to shy away from the spotlight. But tonight she had done something different. She had stood up for herself, faced her fears, and proven that she wasn't just someone hiding in the background. "Thanks," Emily said, her voice quieter now, a mix of gratitude and newfound strength. "I didn't think I had it in me." Lily smiled, squeezing her shoulder. "You do. You always have." The rest of the night passed in a blur. People came up to her, offering compliments and asking about her musical background. Emily answered their questions, but each time she did, she felt a little less nervous. She wasn't just Emily, the shy girl from work. She was Emily, the woman who had played the piano in front of a crowd and made them listen. As the party wound down, Emily found herself standing by the door, ready to leave. She had spent most of the evening just observing, feeling a little detached from everything around her. But as she put on her coat and prepared to leave, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. "Hey, Em," Lily called, catching up with her. "I'm really proud of you tonight. Don't forget that, okay?" Emily nodded, her smile genuine now. "I won't. Thanks for being there for me." With that, she stepped out into the cool night air, the party still echoing in her mind. She had faced something big tonight, something she hadn't thought she could handle. But she had. And that was enough. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could handle whatever came her way. The days following the party were a blur. Emily found herself replaying the moment over and over in her mind, like a song stuck in her head. She couldn't stop thinking about how she had felt when she sat at the piano, the way the music had flowed out of her without hesitation. It was as though she had discovered something about herself, something she didn't know was there before. The feeling of confidence, of being in control, stayed with her long after the applause had faded. Work had been busy as usual, but it felt different now. The office was a place she had always kept a safe distance from, an environment where she could just blend in, do her job, and leave. But now she couldn't help but feel a little more present, a little more visible. People had started to look at her differently, and that made her feel both uncomfortable and oddly proud. It wasn't just the compliments about her piano performance, it was the way people spoke to her now. There was a new kind of respect in their voices, a kind of acknowledgement that hadn't been there before. Even Mark, who had seemed so eager to put her down at the party, had been quieter in the days since. Emily noticed that he no longer looked at her with that same arrogant smirk. Instead, there was a subtle shift, as if he was unsure how to treat her now that she had proven herself in a way he hadn't expected. At first, Emily wasn't sure how to react to the changes around her. She wasn't used to being noticed, to being someone people admired. It felt like a double-edged sword. Part of her loved the newfound attention. It made her feel like she wasn't invisible anymore, like she had finally stepped out of the shadows. But at the same time, it made her nervous. She didn't want to be seen as some kind of performer, someone who had to constantly live up to expectations. She wasn't sure if she could handle that kind of pressure. Lily noticed the shift in Emily too. She had always been supportive, but now she seemed more eager to talk to her, to check in. One morning, as they sat in the break room together, Lily raised her eyebrows, a playful smile on her face. "Okay, so tell me, how does it feel to be the office celebrity now?" Lily asked, her tone light but teasing. Emily chuckled nervously, trying to brush it off. "It feels strange, actually," she admitted, stirring her coffee. "I mean, it's nice that people are being nice, but I don't know. I'm not used to it." "I get it," Lily said, her voice turning more serious. "But you deserve it, Em. You really do. That performance was incredible. You've got this whole side to you that no one even knew about. And I think that's a good thing." Emily smiled, grateful for Lily's words. "I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. It's like I did something I never thought I could do. But now, I don't know how to keep that going. What if I can't do it again? What if people expect me to always be on?" Lily gave her a knowing look. "You don't have to do anything just to please other people. The point is, you showed everyone who you really are. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone, Em. Just be you." Her words stuck with Emily. Just be you. It sounded simple, but it was something Emily had never really allowed herself to do before. She had always been too worried about fitting in, about being invisible, about keeping the peace. But now, after the performance, after the applause and the compliments, Emily realized that maybe it was time to stop hiding. Over the next few days, Emily began to change in small but significant ways. She started to speak up more at work, offering her ideas in meetings and contributing to conversations with more confidence. It wasn't that she had suddenly become the loudest person in the room. It was more that she stopped holding back. She allowed herself to be seen, to be heard, and to take up space without feeling like she had to apologize for it. But as she grew more comfortable with herself, she also began to notice things she hadn't before. There were moments when the attention felt heavy, when people expected her to keep performing, to keep being the version of herself they had seen at the party. It wasn't that they were demanding anything from her directly. It was just this unspoken pressure, this subtle expectation that she should always be that person who could step up and shine. And that was a lot to carry. One afternoon, as she was working late, Emily received a message from Lily asking if she wanted to grab coffee after work. Emily felt the familiar pull of wanting to say no. After all, she had just finished a long day and was exhausted. But something inside her pushed her to say yes. Maybe it was the need for a break from the routine, or maybe it was the desire to have someone to talk to who understood what she was going through. When they met at the coffee shop, Lily immediately picked up on Emily's mood. "You okay?" she asked, her tone gentle, but there was an edge of concern in her voice. "You've seemed a little off lately." Emily sighed, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I don't know. I guess I'm just tired. It's like I thought everything would go back to normal after the party, but now it feels like there's this pressure to keep being. I don't know, this version of myself that everyone expects." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I get it. It's like you've become this symbol or something, right? People see you as the girl who stood up and nailed the piano performance, and now they think you're this confident, outgoing person all the time. But that's not really you. You don't have to be that all the time. You can have bad days, you can be quiet or unsure, or just want to be left alone." Emily's shoulders relaxed a little at Lily's words. "That's what I've been feeling. Like I have to be this perfect version of myself or else people will be disappointed. It's hard to explain." "I know," Lily said softly, "but you don't have to live up to anyone's expectations. You're allowed to be just you. The real you." Not the one people want you to be. The words hit home. Emily realized that she had been so focused on the image people had of her, the confident piano player, that she had lost sight of the fact that she was allowed to be more than that. She was allowed to have moments of doubt, to not always be on her game, to be quiet if she needed to be. She didn't have to keep performing to meet someone else's expectations. I think I've been trying to be everything everyone wants me to be, Emily admitted, a little embarrassed by how much she had been suppressing. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to stop, Lily said, her voice kind but firm. You just need to start being yourself more. The way you were at the party, that wasn't just some performance. That was you. But you're also allowed to be different, to be quiet or to not always have it all together. You don't owe anyone a show. Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. It was like a weight had been lifted, and for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe. She didn't have to keep pretending, didn't have to keep trying to be something she wasn't. She could be her true self. Quiet, uncertain and flawed, and that was enough. As they finished their coffee, Emily felt a shift inside herself. She didn't need to constantly prove her worth to anyone. She could still pursue her passions, still push herself, but she didn't have to do it for anyone else. It had to be for her. For the first time in a long while, she realized that she had the power to define who she was, not the people around her, not the expectations they had of her, but herself. And with that, Emily walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter, knowing that she was finally ready to take control of her own story. No more hiding, no more pretending, just being her, in all her imperfect, beautiful truth. The days after her conversation with Lily felt different, almost like a fresh start. Emily noticed a subtle change in the way she carried herself, as though she had shed an invisible weight. The pressure she had felt to constantly perform, to be the confident, perfect version of herself, started to fade. She was beginning to accept that she didn't have to meet anyone's expectations except her own. Work had started to feel less intimidating. Instead of trying to keep a low profile, Emily found herself speaking up more in meetings, sharing her thoughts and ideas with a newfound confidence. She realized that her voice mattered, that what she had to say was valuable, and that she didn't need to shrink just to fit in. And though it wasn't always easy, sometimes it felt uncomfortable, Emily was no longer afraid of being heard. People around her began to notice the change as well. They respected her more, not because she was suddenly more outgoing, but because she was finally being real. She wasn't pretending to be something she wasn't, and that authenticity spoke louder than any performance ever could. There was still admiration, but it wasn't the kind of superficial praise she had been getting before. This time it felt more genuine. Mark in particular seemed to pick up on her shift. At first he had been wary of her newfound confidence. After all, he had spent so much time belittling her, putting her down, assuming she was weak. But now when he spoke to her, it was different. There was no longer that arrogant edge to his voice. Instead, there was a subtle kind of respect, as if he was finally seeing her for who she truly was. One afternoon, as Emily was packing up her things to leave work, Mark approached her, looking a little more relaxed than usual. He leaned against her desk, arms folded, his expression more neutral than the usual smug smile. "Hey," he said, not in the usual mocking way, but with a slight curiosity. "I've been meaning to ask, how do you feel now, after everything? You know, with the performance and all." Emily, who was used to brushing off his questions or responding with a guarded answer, decided to give him a more honest reply this time. "It feels good," she said, her voice steady. "It feels like I've finally let go of all the things that were holding me back. I'm just being myself now." Mark nodded slowly as if he were processing her words. There was a moment of silence before he spoke again, this time more thoughtfully. "You know, I didn't really expect you to do what you did, but I respect it. You showed everyone that you're not just the shy, quiet girl. You've got something real in you." For a second, Emily was taken aback. Mark had never spoken to her like this before. There was no sarcasm, no condescension, just respect. She didn't know what to say at first, so she just nodded. "Thanks," she replied, feeling a little more at ease than she had before. "That means more than you think." Mark gave her a small smile, then straightened up. "Well, I'll let you get going. But just keep doing your thing. You're more than people give you credit for. As he walked away, Emily stood there for a moment trying to absorb what had just happened. It was the first time she had ever seen Mark acknowledge her as an equal, as someone worthy of respect. And it felt good. She realized that it wasn't about him or anyone else accepting her anymore. It was about her accepting herself. And when she did that, the rest seemed to fall into place. The weeks that followed were a period of reflection and growth for Emily. She continued to embrace her authentic self, both at work and in her personal life. There were still moments of doubt, of course, times when she second-guessed herself when the old insecurities tried to creep back in. But Emily was no longer afraid to face them. She had learned that doubt was just a part of the process, not a reason to give up. One weekend, as she was walking through the park, enjoying the quiet of the early morning, Emily found herself thinking about the piano again. She hadn't played since the night of the party. It had been a while, and while she had told herself she wasn't ready to go back to performing, she felt a pull, a longing to reconnect with the music that had always been there for her. Maybe it was time to play again, but this time, just for herself. No audience, no pressure, just the music, like it used to be. That afternoon, she sat down at the piano in her living room, her fingers hesitating for only a moment before they pressed down on the keys. The sound filled the room, soft and familiar, as she let her emotions pour into the music. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't thinking about what others would think. She was just playing. And as she played, Emily felt something inside her shift once more. It was a deeper connection than before, a sense of peace that came from simply being in the moment. There was no judgment, no expectations, just the pure joy of the music. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about being free, free to make mistakes, free to express herself, free to be who she was without apology. When she finished, Emily sat back and took a deep breath. The music had given her something she hadn't even realized she needed, a sense of release. It was a reminder that she didn't have to prove anything. She didn't have to be perfect. All she needed to do was be herself. The next day, she received a message from Lily. "Hey, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? How's everything been lately?" Emily smiled as she read the message. She could already hear Lily's voice in her head, full of warmth and concern. It was strange how much she had changed in such a short time. She had gone from being a woman afraid to take up space to someone who was learning to embrace her own voice, both literally and figuratively. She took a moment before typing her response, choosing her words carefully. "I'm doing well," she typed. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I've realized something important. I don't need to be anyone other than who I am. It's scary, but it feels right." A few seconds later, Lily's reply popped up. "I'm proud of you, Em. You've always had it in you. Now you're just seeing it for yourself. Keep going." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She didn't need validation from anyone anymore. She had learned to validate herself. The following week at work, things felt more natural. Emily was no longer trying to fit into a mold or meet expectations. She was simply doing her job, contributing her ideas, and letting her creativity flow in ways she hadn't before. There was a confidence in her now, not because she was always confident, but because she had learned how to embrace her flaws and vulnerabilities. Even Mark, who had once been a source of tension, seemed to respect the changes in her. There was no more mocking or belittling. Instead, there was mutual respect, and that was enough. Emily had realized that the only person whose opinion truly mattered was her own. As the weeks passed, she continued to play the piano in the quiet moments of her life. Music became her sanctuary, a place where she could be herself without any pressure. She wasn't performing anymore. She was simply living. And with that, Emily knew she had come full circle. She had found the strength to stand on her own, to embrace her true self and to let go of the need for validation from anyone else. She had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that she was enough just as she was.